Hello, welcome back for the October County Board Wrap-Up. I'm Diana Sun from the Office of Communications. With me here today is Mary Hynes, County Board Chair. Welcome, Mary. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Each month following the county board meetings, we're taking a half hour to talk about some of the actions the board took and what those actions mean for you, your family, and our community. This month, we'll be discussing exciting new development plans for two of Arlington's busiest urban villages. We'll also discuss the latest developments for Fire Station Number 8, new streetlights coming to Lee Highway, some new park news, everybody likes that, and our continuing agreements with Falls Church. As always, Mary Hynes will help us understand it all. So Mary, let's start with the two site plans that the board took up this meeting. And they were in two of our busiest urban villages, Ballston and Clarendon. So let's start by talking with about the Ballston Project, which is a residential project that will replace an Exxon building, an Exxon station on North Glebe Road.
Right.
Now, some people have expressed some concerns that perhaps Arlington is being overbuilt, and they're wondering, is it a good trade-off to lose a gas station and gain even more residential buildings?
Well, you know, it's a fair question. Our whole theory about how our community should evolve is based on the idea that we concentrate development around good transit in order to preserve and protect the single-family neighborhoods. And our planning has anticipated that Glebe Road, particularly this west side, would add some more density, a mixture of commercial and residential. And that gas stations really probably shouldn't be on the most prominent corner of a road like this. But we ask ourselves a lot of questions to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Now, the building is only a 6-story building. It steps down from that tall tower that's at the mall. So we have this taper that goes to the townhomes that are going to be behind this. And part of what we're trying to do is create good places for people to live where we have good transit. They don't need their cars. They're not adding to congestion. They're taking advantage of the infrastructure we've already built as they think about how to organize their lives, their work, their jobs, all of that sort of stuff. So it's every time we go through this sort of very careful analysis of can we manage this. But our plans have long anticipated this change along Glebe Road.
I mean, this type of planning to concentrate around these transit areas, that's really dates back to the 60s, right?
It does. You know, a lot of times people think about that bullseye. You know, we used to say the metro station is the center of the bullseye, and then we have concentric rings that step down.
And then they taper down.
It tapers down. Some people call it a wedding cake. Some people call it a bullseye. And where we really are, you know, 40 years after the plan was adopted, is that we've done most of the bullseye stuff, and now we're doing what I think of as really the hardest, which is the edge of the bullseye. How do we have that relationship that feels comfortable for people in townhomes or single-family homes to this, you know, increased height, more units, but still very residential in character.
It's still that urban village.
It is really, and handling those transitions is really important. And we're gonna, I think, as a community, continue to have this conversation because we have other corridors where change is likely to come in the next 15 years or so.
Well, in that context, could you talk a little bit about this particular project?
Sure. So this is done by a group called the Penrose Group, and they've done a couple of other projects there. They tend to build things and keep them. Those are developers we like because they're vested in the community. It's 173 units. And one of the things I love the most about this is this project has two fronts. So there's a front on Glebe Road that reads kind of like a regular apartment building. It's got retail on both ends and an entry in the middle and interesting kind of architecture. But on the back, as it faces these townhomes, which have been in place for 25 years, we've taken what was an alley that worked pretty well for garbage trucks and cutting through the block,
yes,
and created more of a place. So the other front of the new building basically faces this upgraded alley. Some would call it a mews. So there are front doors to units that are on the ground floor that face the doors of the townhomes. And the developer is going to install a lovely pavement treatment and plantings, and all of a sudden you have a really kind of special little block here.
That actually sounds like a lovely transition.
It's a beautiful transition, and as I said, you know, this whole issue of edge, if you think about when we built Market Common and we
Yes.
built the stores and the back of the shops at the same time that we built the townhomes and some of the other housing, well, when people bought, they bought into that condition. There's an alley, loading happens, cars come and
Yes.
go. In this case, those townhomes were built 25 years ago.
Without an idea,
Without
yes.
this idea being worked out. And so we have these circumstances in many places.
That sounds like such a creative solution.
It's a really great idea. Kudos to our planning commission and to the neighbors who worked so well with the developer to end up with something that I think is going to be special.
It's interesting. You talked about a muse. It's almost like it's gone back to a great idea from the
I
past.
think that, you know,
in a very modern way.
Exactly, and we need to recognize that good cities have all kinds of great ideas in them.
What sort of community benefits are coming with the project?
Well, we'll get, as we often do, some affordable housing on site.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's one, a couple of the units are the ones that face onto the mews,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them is a 3-bedroom unit, which is hard to find in
Yes.
this part of Arlington. The mews is in and of itself a community benefit. They'll make the usual kinds of contributions for transportation improvements, and there'll be some public art contribution as well. One of the other things we're getting is, and people may be aware of this, we've been doing on-street parking on Glebe Road during non-rush hour. So this will be another block where our pedestrians will have the protection of parked cars in the non-peak hours, which for me as a walker always feels so much safer.
I think we have other changes coming to Ballston as well.
Oh, you're right. Well, so next month in November, we will be considering a proposal for a total redo of the mall. We're calling it Ballston Quarter now. We've been working very carefully with Forest City. Forest City, by the way, I just went down to visit what they're doing in DC down by the ballpark. If people haven't been,
Yes.
take the subway over there to Navy Yard and walk around, because Forest City has some really great ideas. So the Planning
It's
Commission,
very walkable.
It's very
Yes.
walkable. It's very friendly. There's nice little moments of green, even in this very urban, and of course they have the river. I wish we had the river, but we don't. We have Glebe Road and Wilson Boulevard. But there's a lot going on here to really revitalize the mall and turn it back into what it was when it first was redone from Parkington, which was an exciting place to go. Hard to believe now, we thought that was exciting, but it was
Right.
the 80s. So we're really looking forward to that. But the board will take that up in November.
That's a very exciting prospect.
It is.
The Ballston site plan was not the only big development item on the agenda this month. We'll talk about the future of Clarendon when we return in a moment.
Anywhere you drive in Arlington, you'll encounter county work crews who are out performing daily tasks like cleaning streets, collecting leaves, or plowing snow. Driving safely around these vehicles is extremely important to avoid accidents or injuries. Trucks do not have the same stop-and-go capability as cars. Therefore, here are some safety tips our Department of Environmental Services would like you to remember. Please slow down around work zones and provide county vehicles and personnel additional space needed to safely operate. Trucks have blind spots between the doors and the rear of the vehicle. Stay out of these areas to ensure you are seen. Do not pull in front of a truck when you need to stop or slow down. Be sure to signal your intentions and do not make moves abruptly. When parking, be sure to park as close to the curb as possible. Most importantly, practice patience. Be a pal, predictable, alert, and lawful, and don't zone out. Finally, if you encounter unsafe behaviors from a county truck driver, report it to our Risk Management Office at 703-228-4444.
We're back with County Board Chair Mary Hynes, who is chatting with us today about the key actions taken this month by the County Board. Another redevelopment that the board took up in this last meeting was a major project for Clarendon, and it is on the Red Top Cab
Right,
site. Could you
right.
tell us about that project?
Well, it's three buildings actually on two sites that are separated by another development. John Shushan is the developer. People may know some of his other work. And of course, Neil Nichols, who's owned this property for a very long time and owned Red Top Cab, was also a big part of the conversation. So there'll be a total of 587 new apartments spread among these three buildings, about 3,500 square feet of ground floor retail. And there's a major kind of realignment of streets associated with this. There really is a pinch point with Washington Boulevard.
That is a very
It's
complicated
and there's a
intersection.
weird little,
Yes.
pork chop in the middle. So this site plan basically regularizes Washington Boulevard, so it's 2 lanes both ways all the time.
Ooh, oh, that's
really
big.
get.
Yes.
And 13th Street, which now sort of only comes in and lets you go one way, will be regularized into a regular intersection. And a new 12th Street is created that kind of moves as 13th does around that corner. So we get a lot better walking grid all through that part of
Yes.
Clarendon.
Oh, that will help.
And then by getting rid of that pork chop and making the 4 lanes consistent, we actually get a new park space on the far western end of Clarendon up against the townhomes that are across the street from St. Charles.
Okay,
And
yes.
that is all part of the site plan, and so those parcels will be turned over to the county. So yet another way that we acquire land, right,
Yes.
and get new parks. So it's really a very lovely use of this 3.5 acres in Clarendon, and very much fits with the Clarendon sector plan, which sort of laid out most of this. There were a few little adjustments that had to be made, but by and large, it achieves the vision that the community laid out about 10 years ago.
And this parcel, I mean, it's a block from the Clarendon Metro? I mean,
Yeah, that's right. The first parcel, the eastern of the 2 parcels, is about a block, and the other one's about 2 blocks. I mean, they're very, very close.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So it'll be a great addition
It
to
is,
Clarendon.
and I will say, for those people who walk along, they've got a really new innovation for Arlington on the ground floor units, which have some, instead of the door facing directly to the street, they've actually turned the door this way, and there's a little patio and some screening and a planter, so that the door
It's
won't
not
be
quite so exposed.
Exactly,
Yes.
and it will be much more pleasant to walk along than some of the earlier buildings where we have just everything's flat and mostly what we have are closed blinds.
Yes, because people are
It's
walking.
going to be.
right,
It's
yes.
really a beautiful set of buildings and a little bit more modern than some of the rest of Clarendon, which I think is a nice change too.
Is there affordable units
Yep.
as part of this
There are
project?
there are 6 as a result of the bonus density, and of course, all of these community benefit packages are balanced, and so to achieve this particular vision that the community laid out, there's a lot of road work, which is expensive, that the company is doing.
The
There's
street alignments
the
that you
street
talked about,
alignments that I
yes.
talked about. There's the park, and then there's affordable housing. So the package is balanced to achieve multiple goals.
I see, because of all that infrastructure as well, yes.
Yeah, really necessary to do that infrastructure. So there's 6 on-site, and then the developer, per our ordinance, will make about a $1.7 million contribution to our Affordable Housing Investment Fund, which will then let us leverage into other developments.
Elsewhere, yes.
Exactly.
Oh, that sounds like a win-win all the way
I
around.
think so too, Diana.
Yes.
It's really, and again, as you can see on the screen, there's some really nice elements in the architecture and amenities on the rooftops, and we in Clarendon think this is great progress.
That's right. This will be it's in
Oh,
your neighborhood.
hey,
It's in my neighborhood.
I walk down here pretty regularly,
Yes.
and so I'm really looking forward to it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Balancing development pressures with the preservation of neighborhoods, adding affordable housing, managing traffic, all a part of a day's work for county board members. But development issues are not the only issues that the board tackled in October. When we come back, Mary Hynes will talk about streetlights, a fire station's future, give us some good news on parks, and more.
Do you know where you can plan your family's next picnic and nature walk? Travel back in time without leaving your chair? Or maybe take a tour of Arlington County's public art, even when it's raining? Well, here at Arlington County's GIS Mapping Center, we can help you do all of this and more from your desktop computer or mobile device. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, and we gather and analyze data to create maps, charts, and 3D models of the world around you. Whether it's planning a safe route to school for your child or planning a bike route on over 100 miles of trails, we've got you covered. And if you need a bike, we can show you where all the Capital Bike Share stations are, repair stations, and restrooms for your next adventure on wheels. Finding the nearest police station, fire hydrant, bus stop, or voting station couldn't be easier thanks to Arlington County's GIS Mapping Center. Our team supports Arlington's residents, county government, and other organizations. We provide aerial photo analysis, data maintenance, digitizing support, and much more. Providing these tools empowers you to make better informed decisions about your work, life, and recreation in the county. See what GIS is doing for Arlington and see what it can do for you. Visit maps.arlingtonva.us and get started.
We're back with County Board Chair Mary Hynes, continuing our discussion of the highlights from the board's October meeting. Mary, the County Board took some action on Fire Station number 8 this month, and could you describe what that action was and what does it mean?
Sure. Fire Station 8, for people who aren't aware, is on Lee Highway. It's across from the Halls Hill neighborhood, but maybe a better landmark might be the Langston Brown Community Center
Or Heidelberg
Bakery, right. So now you kind of have it placed. It's quite an old building, more than 50 years old. And it's from a time when firemen were all men. And so it has issues about accommodating our men and women firefighters. And
probably modern equipment as well.
And modern equipment as well. And so it really has reached the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced. And in that thought of replacing it, we had a conversation with the fire chief about the fact that our response times north of Lee Highway are not as short as we would like them to be. In fact, all the way up at the tippy north part of Arlington, it can sometimes take more than 10 minutes for an ambulance or a fire truck to arrive, and that's longer than we would like. So since this needs to be replaced because it's obsolete, because it's not big enough, the question is there another place that would help reduce the response times north of Lee Highway and make more sense, since we're going to spend the money to fix it anyway. So we, in June, began a conversation with the community because the county doesn't own a whole lot of land north of Lee Highway that isn't a park. And so we said to the community, citing this is going to be difficult, come and talk to us, give us some ideas about things you think we ought to explore. And we had a couple of meetings, some of them in the Old Dominion Civic Association, which is near Marymount, where the county owns 7 acres that are include the leaf mulch pile, which people know, and the salt dome. And where we own some other land we thought might work for a fire station, as well as the Halls Hill community and other folks. And a lot of things were suggested. The county staff's preference is in the Old Dominion Civic Association as part of that 7-acre, the mulch pile site. But we said, come talk to us. We're open to other things. And staff did a lot of work, and a matrix was created, and there's maybe 5 sites that still nominally qualify, the Old Dominion site being one of them. And we have kept the notion that it could potentially stay at its current location alive as we've continued this process. After the matrix was developed, the board really decided, and the manager recommended, that we form a task force. And so what we did at the board meeting this Saturday was adopt the charge for the task force. It has a relatively short time frame through March of next year because we want to be sure that whatever the advice is, we can factor it into the capital improvement plan, which will be adopted in the late spring, early summer.
So all part of that planning.
All part of that planning, because the other thing is that the salt dome, as many people are aware, is starting to fail. We actually have put a temporary structure there to partly manage it this year, but we don't want to replan the site if we don't know what we're doing about the fire station. So civic associations in the service area will be asked to send in a couple of names. The board members will choose the membership for the task force. We hope to appoint that in November. And then the group will have about 5 months, including the holiday season, to kind of dive in and come back to the board with some recommendations about what to do next.
So we'll be hearing more from the task force as
I
we
think,
go on.
yeah, and really I think we won't hear too much until we get to March. I think they're going to be pretty busy just understanding what's available. But it's a very constrained charge. The charge is, where should we site this fire station? It is not a charge to reconsider how we do fire service. It is not a charge about response times anyplace else. It's, we have this one that isn't working
Yes.
well for us. We need to replace it. Is there a better place to put it than where it is now?
Let's get your input onto another action that the board took. The board named a park at the October meeting. And how does that happen? And how did you choose that particular name? This is a park, a new park on Columbia Pike.
Right, just off Columbia Pike in the Arlington View neighborhood, in fact, where we had a very, in a way, poignant situation where a co-op was built, multifamily co-op was built, when African American families had to vacate land to build the Pentagon. And so these George Washington Carver homes were built as, for those families.
Yes.
And we had sort of a few of the original owners plus
Wow.
family members still in this housing. And as part of our work on the Columbia Pike plan, we worked with the neighborhood and with the owners to come up with a new form of housing that would be allowed there because it really had reached the end of its useful life, needed to be replaced, and the families didn't really have the money because of it was how it was all done. Everybody had to move together at once. So we built some new multifamily townhomes and piggyback townhomes, so 2 units on top. And as a result of all of that, we have this new park. And the neighborhood was asked what they wanted to name it, and they suggested George Washington Carver Park
To honor
to
the
honor
legacy,
that
yes.
story, right? And then it goes to the Parks Commission, and the Parks Commission said they supported it, and I even think our Historic Affairs and Landmark Review Board came into the process. And so consequently, we approved that, and the historic signs and the name signs will be going up in the very near future.
What a great story, and what a great
Yeah.
legacy.
Absolutely.
And there was another park that received some very special recognition, I understand.
You're right. So the Old Growth Forest Network came in and gave us signage to identify the fact that 24 acres of Glen Carlin Park is considered to be an old growth forest. Now that means that these are the original trees. Nope, they haven't been cut down.
That is amazing.
Isn't it amazing? So some of these trees are 100 feet tall and more than 200 years old. And it's important because they're habitats that haven't been disturbed. And so wildlife and certain kinds of flora are just there that we wouldn't find in other places. And how lucky we are to have that in Glen Carlin.
They're here and they're flourishing, and
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
In this
that we
urban place, we
yes,
have this
old growth
really special
forest.
old growth forest.
Amazing.
So the signs will go up and people can and should take advantage of taking that walk.
You can see an old growth forest right here.
Exactly.
Exactly. The board also approved a $2.2 million contract for streetlights on Lee Highway. What is that about?
Sure. It's the stretch of Lee Highway that starts at Veach Street and runs down that hill to get to Roslyn.
Okay.
And in the 80s, VDOT did a project here to improve the road.
That's the Virginia
The
Department of Transportation.
And they put lights in, and what they do when they do stuff like that is then they turn the lights over to us. And and for a number of reasons, these lights were at the end of their useful life. There were not a whole lot of them, and their placement was spotty. And honestly, if you've ever walked there at night, you would never want to do it again, because it's also, there's a great big hill and retaining wall that goes up. So the county prioritized this section, and we're going to be putting in new LED lights, and we're going to regularize the placement, not only on Lee Highway, but on the bridges that cross over and that neighbors use to walk. So it's going to end up being about 140 some poles over this area on both sides, and almost double that lights,
So
because they have
more lights, more efficient lighting,
Right.
better lighting.
better lighting, safer all the way around, and we'll install them in such a way that that the wiring is more protected. They used to just lay the wire in the ground. Now we know it's better if we put it in conduit. It's easier to take care of, and it doesn't degrade. So all those good things are
Yes.
going to happen
What a
as
great
a result.
project.
Yeah, it's a great project.
The last item I'd like to ask you about is the board renewed some contracts with the City of Falls Church. And our viewers may not be even aware that for many years we have provided some very important services to the City of Falls Church. And what are they?
Sure. So let's start with fire. We have a fire station at the very edge of Arlington, which is staffed partly by the Falls Church volunteer fire people and by our professional people. Arlington provides the equipment, Falls Church takes care of the building. And so we've had this long-standing cooperative agreement, and we've renewed it again. It's advantageous to all of us to...
Yeah, they don't need their own fire department.
No,
Right,
they're
that
so
makes
small,
sense.
2.2 square miles or something is the city. And then the other thing we do with them, among others, but this other one that we renewed has to do with the jail. So we have a longstanding agreement that we provide jail services for any folks who are picked up in Falls Church, and our clerk of the court and our Commonwealth's attorney and all those folks also provide services. So it's pretty seamless. If you have to go to jail, it's pretty seamless. And our sheriff just manages all of that, and it's to great benefit to all of us.
That's a great way to have that collaboration with our next door neighbor.
It really is, and we talk about all the time, are there other things we ought to be doing together? So I suspect that'll be a conversation moving forward. I'd love to, they don't have good bus service. It'd be great for us to be able to tie art buses in with them and really improve the quality of their service and get more people on transit.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's hard to run a very small
They
operation.
tried, and they didn't have enough money, and then they had us do it for a while, and then in the downturn, they just didn't have the money to operate it anymore, and so they ended the service. It was unfortunate.
Mary, thank you so much for once again taking the time to explain to us some of the actions that the board took at your meeting.
It's always great to be here, Diana.
And we're going to see you next month when we wrap up the November board meeting.
Absolutely. It's going to be a busy meeting, so I'm looking forward to it.
And thank you all once again for joining us for the County Board Wrap-Up. Remember, if you have questions or comments for the board chair, you can email them to arlingtontv@arlingtonva.us. Take care, and we'll see you next month.
We are rolling.
All right, Mama's gonna bring you home. Mama's gonna bring you home.
No.
Challenge your kids to be active and eat healthy.
Let's see what you can do. Let's go.
Search We Can for ideas on how to get healthy together.